You guys can continue that conversation. It might be interesting for some people. It's informal.
We'll see who all joins us.
All right, everybody. We'll get started in just a few minutes. If you're waiting around, feel free to go into the chat and introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and we'll get started in just 1 minute or so.
So, Bill, where's your microphone in that headset?
It's right over here on my right ear.
Okay.
Do I sound funny?
No, it's just interesting. You don't see the microphone. I guess it works kind of like the earbuds do.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it took me a while to get used to using this.
Yeah.
But, it's like I feel weird not having it on when I'm working now. So, make fun of me. Anyway.
Pretty clear.
All right. All right. So, yeah. So it's about 2 after. We've got expecting a few more to join, but we'll go ahead and get started. And as I said, go ahead and jump into the chat and introduce yourself. One thing about the chat is you'll definitely want to change the setting. Sometimes it defaults to just panelists, and you want to send those messages to panelists and attendees so we can all see what you're talking about. All right. So I'm Bill Conforti with Association Analytics. It's my pleasure to welcome to our new virtual discussion series, where our goal is to bring together association professionals with industry leaders and partners to bring value to the community through these one-on-one discussions, expert panels, product overviews, and other types of educational sessions that will help your association through these challenging times. And of course, we hope to do that in ways that are fun and engaging, and we all want to learn from each other. So it's not just us teaching you things. We also want to hear what you have to say, and we really do encourage you to participate, add your comments and questions in the chat and the Q&A. So we're going to continue to meet bi-weekly on Thursdays, and all the recordings will be available to all those who register. And again, we want to hear from you. So chat tool, Q&A to submit your questions and to connect with others. All right. So today we have a very interesting topic. So A2, we love all things related to data. And so today we're going to talk about a type of data and a type of data collection that we don't really talk about as much, maybe not as much as we should. And so in that vein, we're very excited to have our friends from Dynamic Benchmarking join us. And they're going to talk about member contributed data, and more specifically about how and why we should add benchmarking studies to our portfolio of data collection methods. All right, so let's take a quick look at the agenda. So we're going to start with a few introductory slides. We're going to talk about data ecosystem. We're going to talk about the exchange of value, and that's mostly about member engagement. I'll kick it over to Ray, who's going to educate us on best practices in data collection broadly, but with a specific focus on benchmarking studies, and kind of educate us a bit on how they're different from surveys. And then finally, Casey is going to share some excellent insights for us on the importance and value of benchmarking from a case study, and give us some key takeaways and lessons learned. So you're probably wondering who's Ray and who's Casey. So let's do some introductions. I'll start. I'm Bill Conforti, again, Senior VP of Strategy and Solutions with Association Analytics. basically what I do in that role is interact a lot with our clients and prospects, as well as our internal teams that are responsible for development and implementation of our product and our services, and to make sure that all that kind of stays aligned with what the market is looking for. So, meetings around our product, webinars like this, all the different ways that we can collect data on what kinds of issues and problems that the market is facing is always great for me. So look forward to your feedback. So Ray, like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Ray McDonald. I'm president of Dynamic Benchmarking, and we are a company that specializes in associations. We work exclusively in the association space, helping associations convert either their surveys over to benchmarking studies, or a lot of them are getting started with benchmarking for the very first time. So thank you for letting us join today, Bill. You guys have quite a following, and so we're pleased to be able to present today. So thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Casey?
Again, thank you for the opportunity, Bill. This is a great opportunity for us to let you know more about us. I'm Casey Sklar. I'm the Executive Director of the American Public Gardens Association. We represent a little over 600 member institutions in the USA, Canada, Mexico, and about 24 other countries. Our vision is a world where public gardens are indispensable, and chances are there's a botanical garden or an arboretum or an urban green space or another one of our member organizations that's near you, and about 1 in 6 of you have been to it in the last year, and we know that because of benchmarking. And we'll talk to you a little bit more about our story and a little bit more about what our association is a little later in the program, but thank you all for joining us, especially to all of my other association brethren who are joining us. This has been a great year for us. A lot of learning opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. Some good and some bad, right? All right. So let's start with a poll question. So the question for today is, so we know a little bit about what benchmarking is, based on what we've talked about so far. So what kinds of benchmarking does your association provide for your members? So this is a type of poll question where you select all that apply. So professional development, diversity and inclusion, salary, comp and benefits, operations, something that's industry specific, or maybe you haven't done it or you just don't know. So take a minute and answer that, and then we'll show you the results.
While Bill's compiling that, I'd also encourage you all to use the chat feature and the Q&A feature. This is a group of folks who I think are very happy and willing to answer questions, and you'll see how they all thread together during the program.
Okay, everybody. Just realized that my screen wasn't showing all that time, so apologize for not showing the pretty pictures of our panelists. I'm actually going to go back and show you this. So there we have Ray and Casey, and here's our poll question. And sorry for the mix-up there. Anyway, okay, so this is interesting, right? So we have some professional development, not as much diversity and inclusion as I might have expected. Industry specific is the leader there. That's actually a little bit surprising to me, but I want to get your feedback on this, guys. You guys have, in particular Ray, or anything about the poll results that are surprising for you?
Sure. The industry specific is very surprising. I figured, I thought that that the compensation and benefits would have been your largest. I think this time next year, your diversity and inclusion will probably be your largest. That seems to be the fastest growing area.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So with that in mind, if for some of you that have answered industry specific, be curious to hear more about that. If you would put a put a note in the chat and let us know. As a matter of fact, for any of these that you're willing to share, what things you benchmark on, that'll be great feedback for us. And it may actually influence how things are discussed in the in things going forward. All right. So as I said, and the agenda slide, which I now know that you couldn't see, I'm so sorry for that. So I'm going to start off with a little bit about data ecosystem. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about is types of data. So you guys have probably seen some of this kind of thing before. It's frequently part of our presentations about about the types, about the broader data strategies and things like that. So first party data is of course data that you own, but more importantly, it's data that's collected directly from your members, from your customers. It's things that are kept in all of your usual source systems. Most of it is in your AMS, but it's also in your LMS and other places where you monitor those transactional touch points. Second party data is basically another organization's first party data, right? It's for commercial organizations. It's common to buy marketing lists and things like that. For associations, second party data is most often like an affiliate or a partner organization or something like that. So third party is very interesting. And with third party data, you're bringing in, it's from multiple sources, right? It's not stuff that you collected directly. It's through an aggregator, which is, commercial companies sometimes, but there's a lot of publicly available free third party data. Census Bureau is a really good example where you can get, we can benchmark population data and other things, and you can bring that data in and compare it with your first party data on your members and on your customers. And then you can create, what we call, what are called data products. And what I mean by a product is you collect first party data, maybe you add third party data to it, maybe you add some analysis or some, some value to it, some kind of expertise, and then you package that up and provide it to your members as a member benefit. Maybe it's something that you could even monetize. And so I want to just ask informally, it's not an official poll question, but tell us in the chat, is anyone using third-party data to make decisions, and are you combining it with first-party data to do any sort of data products? So just to tell us about that if you're doing it. And so the segue here to the next slide is that, this third-party data, it adds context and it adds depth to a lot of the data that we do have that we're collecting, but when you are engaging with your members and when you're thinking about how to market to them and how to message them, there's still no question really that, first-party data is kind of king, when it comes to that. So there's, this is not a presentation about data repositories, but there are a lot of data sources that you need to aggregate, and most of them are your AMS and your LMS and your event registration systems. So there's a lot of transactional first party data. There's when you look at social media or community, there's a lot also of unstructured data on implicit interest and things like that. And you really should have a system to integrate and aggregate all of that. To add to that, some companies, some associations are using surveys, to ask members what they want. And what we're really talking about today is taking that to the next level with something called a benchmarking study, which is really a way to add a lot of explicit value for your members. And when we talk about value and we talk about member engagement, we're really talking about an exchange of value. And so, you want to have a balance where the association is getting value, based on obviously the revenue that is generated through the members, the kind of transactional and other type of data that they provide, but on the flip side of that, they do things that indicate that they're getting value from the association, like download your content, attend events and things of that sort. But a really explicit example of this is collecting data from the members, right? Packaging that up in useful ways and then providing it back to them as a member benefit, right? And when you do that, and that's kind of essentially what you're doing in a benchmarking study, not only is it highly valuable, but it's something that is uniquely valuable. And it's something that the association is in a unique position to provide, right? So it's really, so you can use your member engagement metrics and scoring to, to understand like who's likely to respond in the first place, but then a very big indication of the value that, that members are receiving is the participation, and then of course the consumption of the results of these type of studies. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Ray to tell you about data collection best practices.
Sure, thanks, Bill. I'm not going to take long. We put together about 6 points here that we just kind of want to go through that we think are important, and takeaways for those of you who are thinking about benchmarking, or those of you who are already doing it. And but the star of the show is Casey. He's going to show you what they've done, and more importantly, how it's been pertinent to what's going on today, and to bring in benefits to the members as well as advocacy. So the first thing is that if you think about the definition, the Webster definition of a association, it's basically a group that is organized for a common cause or purpose. And so so it's the natural place that the members are going to come to for data and for comparison. But there have to be some key things in place for them to do that and for you to be successful. And that's what we're going to kind of talk about. So, there's every member probably wants the information, they want the data. Now getting the data from them is a different story, and we're going to discuss that and how there are better ways than not to do it. But, every member wants it. So it is one of the best ways for an association to remain and maintain the member value that they deliver and the relativeness to their membership. So, but you also have to monitor how you collect it. So you have to have some kind of things in place. So for example, if you're collecting something on a membership application and you think it's important enough to collect on the application, it's probably important enough to use it as a filter or even a question in your data set. So Bill, I'm not able to move the screen here, so if you can just move it for me. There you go. So here's the first thing is that you got to know what your KPIs are, and it's interesting because we have folks on our staff who are going and becoming certified in this field. And one of the examples that I really thought was interesting that was given to me was that Airbnb, who we're all familiar with, so they're looking for their KPIs, and so naturally they wanted to use a KPI of rooms booked. Okay, well, it turns out that that's not really their KPI. That's just an indicator of the real KPI. They figured out after some time that their real KPI was how many 5-star mutual reviews they had received. So meaning that the landlord had given the renter a mutual review and the renter had given the landlord a 5-star review. So they're looking for those because that tells them that's their core value. Their core value is putting this person with this property. And so it was real interesting, but they learned that, that's their real KPI. And so it really is important that the association understand what those real KPIs are and get consensus on it. Make sure that you probably have thought leadership groups. You probably have, you have certain leaders within the association that everybody kind of looks up to. They may have been on the board forever or something of that nature, but get the consensus on what those KPIs are. And they must be a success driver. It's got to be something that determines the success of the membership. Not of the association, but of the member, because again, a benchmarking is something you as an association are doing for your member. And more often than not, it's a calculated value. So it's not just a yes or no answer. It's a value that comes from multiple answers in your question set. So, and so, talking about a thought leader, I'm trying here, Bill. There we go. So the thought leader is, you've got to, elevate your value proposition that you're giving to your members. So that means they've got to see and understand what the value is for them to take their time and go and participate in this, because a lot of times you're collecting data that they may or may not have at their fingertips. So it can take some work on behalf of the members to contribute meaningful data and to contribute accurate data. So that thought leader that I spoke about, this is where they become so important, because they can, properly convey to the membership the value of what it is we're doing. And it's funny because we actually have some clients, that associations, that they make the benchmark a requirement for membership in the organization. And one of the reasons that the one that comes to mind does it is because they base their dues on revenue of the member. And so, obviously that's a question in their benchmarking study. We have another client that they offer awards annually for chapter of the year, and you cannot win the award. You're not eligible to win those awards unless you participate in the study. So there's all kinds of ways to do this, and it just depends on the association and the membership. And so, an annual convention is a good place to promote it. And some people choose to launch their study for that year at the annual convention. Some associations choose to show the findings of the study at the annual convention. So it just depends, especially if it's their first year, then obviously a launching kind of a launch party is a really good idea. And so the last thing here on this point is that it's very important for the association to convey to the membership the importance of this to the association itself, because doing this and doing it properly, it benefits the health of the association. And as Casey's going to talk about later on, in situations where you need data, it's the backbone of your advocacy. So, getting that point across is really helpful in making your collection more successful. So, one of the other things we've seen is trust and privacy. So this is probably one of the toughest things to overcome. And we feel like this is one of the hallmarks and the reasons to use benchmarking versus a survey. So you say, okay, what's the difference in a survey versus a benchmark? Well, a survey is typically a question set that is given to the members, okay? Surveys in and of themselves typically benefit the association more than they do the member. In order for the survey to benefit the member, then somebody has to take the survey and they have to manipulate the data. They have to aggregate and or disaggregate data, and they have to then help that information become pertinent and useful to the member that's contributing the data. Benchmarking, on the other hand, turns that on its head. So with benchmarking, the main driver and the main beneficiary of benchmarking is the actual member. Now, of course, the association is going to receive benefit from that, but the member is the one who really gets the benefit. And with a survey, again, you manipulate data on the back end. So still a lot of the clients that come to us, they're doing a survey and they're doing it via Excel spreadsheets, and they're sending it off to either a consultant and paying a lot of money and having the consultant put it all together and come up with reports and make use of it. Well, there's a couple of problems with that. One is privacy of the data, okay? With a benchmarking study, the association doesn't see the data. We are the keepers of the data. It comes to our data warehouse into our servers. The reports that the member gets have been predetermined. So there is no manipulation of data to make sure that this report is pertinent to this member versus that member. Our system, the way it works is that when the member signs on or comes in to the product, it says, okay, this is who this is Ray McDonald, and this is the organization he's with. So I'm going to plot his data against the aggregate, and the association doesn't have to do anything for that. We build that in the beginning. And so that is the other thing is that, you got to realize that a lot of times you got very sensitive data, and in some associations, you're competitive in nature. So the people that are contributing to the data may have competitors that are contributing data too. So having a third party handle it really helps with the security or the comfort level of the member that's contributing the data. Because a lot of times they'll say, I don't want somebody at the association seeing our salaries, or I don't want someone else on the board to see that's a competitor to see what we're doing. So that kind of takes that off of the table. So the fifth thing we have is milestones. Yep, go ahead.
That's a quick question, just for the benefit of the group here. So we've got a lot of questions over time about data products that I referred to earlier. And as it relates to benchmarking, I'm wondering, like, some of these are just clearly are member benefits that you would offer for free. I'm wondering if you have experience with associations that did things like this, but they monetized it, right? They,
Sure.
they became a source of revenue for the association. Can you talk about that for a second?
Yep. Absolutely. So a lot of associations do charge for the reporting. So one of the benefits that we can allow is we can set thresholds. And so, like, I'm dealing with one now. They have 8 different charging or fees. They have 4 fees for members. So that could be member who contributed and a member who got the report, a member who did not contribute, and a member who got the report. Same thing on non-members. If you're a non-member and you contributed data, then you pay X amount for the reporting. If you did not contribute data, you pay a higher fee for it. So there are plenty of associations that charge for the data and are able to monetize it. But more importantly, I'd say half of our studies that we do for association, half of them are sponsored by somebody. So the association has a vendor partner that wants to have some recognition and wants to have their brand out there, and so they will be glad to sponsor it for them. So those are really the 2 ways: selling the information and gaining a sponsor are the 2 ways to monetize it.
Cool. Do you guys have some materials? Like, if I'm an association and I want to think about doing this, and do you have some materials that might be helpful for me to go out and find a sponsor for my study?
Sure, we do. We actually we have we're probably not the best at finding the sponsors. I tell you, we work with a consulting company who they bring us in because they basically their sole purpose is to help create non-dues revenue, and so they actually go out and do the selling, and then they bring the partner in, which would be us or someone else. So, but yes, we do have some materials. We're not the experts in it, but we do have some things that we've learned in the past.
Great.
So this is implementation milestone. So what we have here is report delivery. Back up one.
Oh, sorry.
That's right. But we have report delivery is something that every association does it different. Okay. But the key is that you have to have milestones set up so that the members know I am going to get value from this at this point in time. And so with that, for example, if they're using a maturity model, then they get data immediately. So the maturity model basically ranks your answers against best practices. So it doesn't require a data pool in order for you to get that information back. So it just says, these are the best practices we set up. And the best example of this is diversity and inclusion. It's always a maturity model. So here are the best practices for diversity and inclusion. Here are my answers. Here's how I rank. Here's where I need to do, I'm doing well, where I'm doing poorly, where I need to work, that type of thing. The other is that a lot of times people will, they do not release any results until all data is collected and they close data collection down. And the reason for doing that is because if you run a report and the data pool, let's say, is 800 members, okay, and we have 30 members contribute data this month, and I run the report again next month, that report can change because the data pool has changed.
Sure.
Doesn't usually change significantly, but it can change. And so some associations say we don't want that because it's confusing, and they'll lose trust in the data. So, and that for that reason, they open reporting after data collection is over. So, but conferences are a real good milestone, as I said before. And one of the other thing is to be very, very cognizant of your members' busy times. So, for example, we do a lot of work in the accounting world. Well, obviously, you don't want to have a benchmarking study going out during tax season. So you understand the members, understand the times that will be the best times for you to ask them to contribute to this information. So, and then the last point I have here is, let me see if it'll move for me. It's giving me a little delay. Here we go. So the last point is, engage the members in a personal manner. This again is where the difference between a benchmarking study and a survey. A benchmarking study shows your data plotted against the peer groups, and you can change those peer groups and those filters. So it delivers an immediate benefit to you, the member. So you can look at an industry-wide report, which is fine, but it really doesn't help you understand how you are functioning, in accordance with your peers. So the other thing is that, member contributed data is a great indicator of member health. If you have a member that has been in your contributing data for 2 years in a row, always one of the first ones in, you launch your study this year, and all of a sudden that member is not contributing data anymore, that could tell the association something. It could be that someone has changed, that member, you've had turnover, and the other person's just not getting it, doesn't understand it, doesn't understand the importance of it. It could be that that member is feeling like they're not getting their money's worth out of the association. But the point is it can help you identify the health of that member. And and the last thing is getting the testimonial from those thought leaders. Those folks that have done this, and getting the testimonial, having that as part of your launch and part of your marketing, because that's the most important thing here, is how you market it and how you set up the expectations to your members. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Casey, and he can.
Okay.
This is all theory for me, and Casey does it all in practice. So.
Yeah, good. So I'm going to turn my screen share off and let. Actually, no, we're not. We're going to go one slide first. While we're doing that, you want to go to screen share now, Casey, or do you want to talk through the slide first and then? You on mute still? I'm going to ask a quick question of Ray anyway while you're coming on here. Ray, give us a sense for timing. Like, how long does it take to create an average study, and how long would it typically run for?
Yeah. So if it's a full platform, such as a financial and operations, or a comp and benefits, or a membership, we usually say 90 days is what it takes for us to create and build that, because we build it all for the association. Now, we have what's called flash studies that where we have a data builder product. Those are 10, 15 questions. They're basically what's happening now, and we're doing a lot of those right now with COVID. Reopenings. We did for a lot of in the beginning. Are you going full virtual? How long are you requiring people to sit in front of the computer? All those type of little things. So those studies can be done in about 48 hours. So we get one 48 hours, we can turn it around.
Awesome.
So it kind of runs the gamut there.
Okay. All right. Casey, you're up.
All right. Just a few notes about managing data during a crisis, and then we'll look at the nuts and bolts and mechanics of it. Really, the key terminology as you're going through this is how as an association can we be relevant? And I think, you heard from Ray and you heard from Bill a little bit about relevance, and that's really what this is all about in the association continuum right now. If we're not relevant, we're not going to be earning revenue for too much longer. And so obviously having data and being a key source and a key resource for data is a really important attribute in the health of any association. So as I first share my screen, and Bill, I can go grab my screen now if you want to unshare, and then I'll reshare. This slide is a little bit, or this screen share just gives you a little bit of an opportunity to know who we are as an association and what we do. We do a lot with our COVID-19 resources. We were very quick to start sharing data and information that benefits both the individual garden and the individual staff member or employee of that garden, or someone who's there. So we have a complete suite of things, different reopening plans if you were going to reopen. We also cater to the individual members' needs with things like health insurance. But a real cornerstone of what we do is house benchmarking and benchmarking results that benefit gardens. And we work those sort of 6 principles for what we do in a whole variety of different ways. This is our public gardens benchmarking platform. Just looking back on the 6 points that Ray raised and how they're going to relate to what I'm talking to you about today. Benchmarking is obviously central and core to what we do. It gets at that hive mentality. I want to talk a little bit about deciding what that true KPI is and how to work that KPI into everything that you're doing. And sometimes it's not an instinctional key performance indicator, and sometimes the audience that you're talking to matters, but it needs to do what I would call is the interocular hypothesis. It's so intuitive that it hits you right between the eyes. And that helps you create that value proposition and lets people know what you're doing and what you're talking about. And then obviously we talked about trust and privacy and our benchmarking platform that we use. And you're seeing our demo site, which is for a little garden not far away from the city center of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, as our demo site. But everything that I'm going to show you is through that demo account, and then you'll see how we sort of filter out of it. And I won't spend too much time in that site today. But you know, a major reason why our members accepted benchmarking was because they knew that they could place their trust in us to be confidential with things like their compensation and benefits data, but to also be relevant with it. But then juxtaposed to something like a survey, we also promised to try to use this as the tool to find out information about them primarily and not bombard them with surveys. And that's kind of gets to number 5 and number 6, where you're hitting your folks where they need to be. You're thinking like them. Like if I think about our garden leaders, they don't have a lot of time on their hands. So we have to make it simple and we have to make it powerful for them. So our benchmarking slogan is simple to use, but seriously powerful. So kind of along this journey and how we meet them, and we meet them where they are, is we often accompany this with personal information or personal stories. And there is always an innate challenge in figuring out, like Bill and Ray mentioned, is the reason that someone's not participating because there's been a change in personnel at that organization. And you really can only do that by mining your membership data. So you can't be ignorant of what's going on in your LMS or your AMS systems. So this is our gardens benchmarking tool, and we use it for several different things and several different pieces of information. I'm going to switch over. I want to show you some of our other pieces of information that we've been using for different things and why we have. Because obviously, this is the story that we needed to create for our members in the wake of garden closures. So our story today kind of begins here. We felt that as gardens, we would be open during stay-at-home guidelines because we were great places for people to go to get out in nature. But we were also linked via a series of codes called the NAICS codes to indoor museums and other cultural institutions like art galleries. So literally within days of the stay-at-home guidelines, we found from a flash survey that we did that really about 97% of our members were closed, and about 90% of that occurred between March 12th and March 24th. And then really about 60% of them occurred in a weekend. And that literally turned our industry on its ears. And so the other part that you start to learn about gardens, and this gets at trying to establish the KPI. So we have a lot of people who come to visit us. We're cultural destinations and cultural attractions, but we're also operating more like a business, even though probably about a quarter of our gardens are linked to a college and university. The majority of them are nonprofit organizations themselves. And so that doesn't mean they're for loss. They're businesses. And these businesses have to look at the bottom line. And if you look at our industry, it's been really hard hit. So what I'm trying to say is we used our benchmarking platform not just to establish previous visitation criteria. So we say, for example, we get 120 million visitors a year. That's almost as much as attendance was at all professional sports combined. NHL, NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball. Now, obviously, that landscape has changed with all the closures affecting both professional sports and our industry. But it gives an idea of parity for people. So when you look at what we were trying to accomplish with benchmarking, we said to ourselves, what are the key things in getting people to understand that what we do is a business? And so we started thinking about, obviously, revenue, but then also in our case, unlike another organization or another business, you can't really close a garden. We have priceless plant collections. Our plants that we have are everything to us. We're living libraries of plants that have implications in agriculture, horticulture. 40% of the pharmaceuticals that you see come from plants. So these are important attributes for us. But we really needed to find something that stuck with the audience that we were looking for. And in this case, it was politicians. So as we look at comparing our different gardens, and especially in their financial information, we chose to go back and really look a little bit squarely at some historical information in regard to their operating revenues and also concomitantly in the nature of their expenses that these gardens were still incurring as a result of this crisis. So I'll come back and talk about that later, but just to give you an idea of how that information's there for the member and how the member's using that. If they want to know where their garden is on that scale, and that's all they want to do, they can achieve that, download that, and utilize that data in terms of where they are against the median or against something else. What we always say to our members is, use these and think about not only where you are, but use the filtering capabilities that you have to figure out where you want to be. So in the case of a normal year, we're encouraging growth of our garden. So we're saying, look, if you like Franklin Botanical Garden or $2 million a year organization, but you want to be a $4 million a year organization, how does that work? And what does that look like to your organization? A lot of our members were now saying, look, if I was a $2 million a year organization, what does a $1.5 million a year organization look like in a post-COVID world? So there's lots of different ways to use that data and make that data relevant for you. Getting back to kind of the story that I want to tell you and to utilize that, hopefully y'all can see my screen here and see the pie chart at the top of my screen. And, you know, we did a rapid survey during which we were looking at just closures and different aspects of closures and what the nature of those closures meant on staffing impacts. And we were asking them at the end of March, and we were asking them really just 3 to 4 questions. We literally promised them 2 minutes of their time to just give us a quick read on what was going on. And from that, we were able to see and to say, okay, we've got an issue where it's not just about shutting down revenue, it's about maintenance of expense to keep the plant collection alive. And that built into a lot of our essential personnel conversations that we had with both state and federal leaders. We've come back and asked these questions very differently. I'll get back to this in just a second. But we've carried that through and kept asking people what their revenue forecasts are going to be. So really what this all bubbled up into for us is we came up with some really simple pieces of information that, collectively speaking, and we based this on 3 historical years of benchmarking, we could figure out that probably we were losing collectively about $3.2 million a day in earned revenue. And that makes up about 60% of what a garden would make. And we were still spending $1.2 million a day in just horticulture and facilities expenses alone, all of which we could break out from that benchmarking survey and that benchmarking platform. We knew how much earned revenue was for our institutions. We knew how much contributed revenue was for our institutions. And we knew what those horticulture and facilities expenses were a day. And that built up into our KPIs. And so it becomes really easy from there to go out to leaders and say, look, we need help from you all as, in this case, I'll use a federal political leader example. The ask could still be made on a garden's behalf to their state to say, why can't you have me have essential personnel, or why can't my organization be open? So in here, we got right to it. We want $130 million, and that's because we're losing $3 million a day just in earned income while we're still paying out expenses. And that key ask propagated again and again and again as per why. We utilized some of the more recent data that we would have. About 97% of gardens across the country are completely or partially closed. And then if you look at that number again, it's discouraging. 91% canceled. It's real easy for everybody to go to the federal government and expect to ask for billions and billions of dollars right now. You have to be strategic in what you're doing. So we've looked at the $130 million and then broke it down as to why we're looking at that. So we're saying the reason we're asking for $130 million is because we know that just horticulture and facilities expenses alone are 27% of what a garden's total expenses would be if they were open. So that gets people to understand and trust you that what you're asking for is actually grounded in fact, not in fiction. And so then as we would go on our individual conversations with individual congressional and Senate staff members, we could look at a lot of those talking points and be having those talking points reiterated over and over again in phone calls, whether we were doing that ourselves with the staff member or whether our gardens were doing it for us. We could give them these talking points and say, hey, look, here are the things that are really important. And if you look, what I've done in this document is I've just highlighted the ones that come directly from our compiled benchmarking results. We knew about the 3 million. That was the top line one that we kept in everybody's mind. But then 23,000 skilled workers, that's a benchmarking stat. Annual attendance at our gardens averaging 120 million visitors a year pre-pandemic. That's a benchmarking stat. So that's my point in terms of using all these things. And now I'm just going to pause and ask, do a little bit Q&A with you. But I also wanted you to see how it works on a state level too. That if we're representing a group of gardens in a particular state, We can generate very easily a sheet like this showing who our members are and then collectively what their impact on the economy is. And the majority of you attending today are association professionals like myself. And I think the more that you can arm your members with information that they can take and utilize, it's so critically important. But there are times where you as an association, especially if you have a national scope, you need to be able to advocate on behalf of your members, some of whom can't do it on their own. And that's a major member benefit for them. Like I'm sending a letter to Harrisburg today, and this sheet is accompanying it. And now we're going to be able to turn back to our members and say, wow, the fact that you were on this list got you that benefit that we talked to Harrisburg, which is our state capital here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, on your behalf. It's also a tool to go to those folks who maybe are considering letting their membership lapse or have let their membership lapse and say, hey, if you're a member, you could have been on this letter and you could have been participating. So those are just some thoughts. I'm happy to go back to any of the documentation that I showed you. A lot of it's readily available on our website. So you can go to publicgardens.org and see a lot of those results for those COVID surveys that we did. And the reality for our gardens today is that not many of them think that the situation economically is going to get better anytime soon. And our association membership is, as Ray mentioned, one of the ones that's based on a revenue platform. So we have to right size ourselves to see how we can serve them, and have changed and pivoted to serve them in different ways than we ever thought imaginable 10 months ago. So questions or comments or considerations from everyone?
Yeah, so yeah, please jump into the Q&A or add some questions to the chat. I'm going to go ahead and ask one on behalf of the audience here. So this is kind of something that's at this point in the webinar, we're usually asking, well, how do I get started, right? If I'm an association professional, well, first of all, it seems to me that, the majority of the value is in the year-over-year comparison, right? The historical data that you have as part of this. And clearly, if you've been benchmarking for 3 or 4 or 5 years and you have that data built in, but how does it work when I'm just getting started? Ray mentioned before that there are some ways to combine previous or sort of repurpose previous surveys into as a basis for benchmarking, but can either of you explain that for the benefit of people that are interested but haven't already had this sort of thing underway?
Sure. Casey, why don't you talk about y'all's first year maybe that y'all did it, and then I'll give some
Yeah, I think what I'll probably do is I'll just show you a little bit of a thought process and a continuum as a good example of this. So I'm going to share my screen again and draw your attention to this March survey. So our March survey, we put together probably in a little under a week and deployed it. And we were asking essentially 3 basic questions. Are you open? Are you closed? Or if you're kind of part way, what sort of things have you undergone? And then are you considering laying folks off? And the key takeaways from this are how quickly gardens closed, how many of them were closed, and what we could foresee the impacts might be for them. That didn't take much time, effort, and energy at all. There were, again, 3 basic questions. We just want 2 minutes of your time. That really helps combat that survey fatigue. It has all the advantages of a good survey, but it also can leverage existing benchmarking data if you have it. Mm-hmm. The basis of the greater benchmarking platform comes in when we're trying to generate the nature of that $130 million ask. And it's one thing to just say, hey, we just think that, based on one survey that we did, that these are the costs that we're asking for. When you're able to say, no, we averaged out over 3 years what our horticulture facilities expenses were, and we're giving you the average of those 3 years historically, and they're consistently within the 27 to 29% expense range, that becomes a basis for really, that's building trust, and it's building respect with someone that they know that that's what you're doing. And it also builds your members' confidence in you, that you know your industry.
I'd say from our standpoint, Bill, probably the easiest way to get started right now is we have what's called a data builder product, and that's where it's a monthly fee, and we will do, depending on which level you choose, we will do anywhere from 4 to 5 of these, what Casey's referring to. We refer to them as flash studies. So they're easy, quick, they deliver pertinent information to the member right then, and they could, that's probably the easiest way. And then you move your, you obviously to keep an operational benchmark study out there, you have to have budget for it, or you have to have some kind of sponsorship, or you have to be charging. Starting with our data builder, you can, the fee is much smaller. You can get going. You start to build your data, and then transition into some of the larger studies. So.
All right. Good. And what about just one last thing? What about expertise, right? So, part of it is resources and things and data to get started. But Casey is an expert at this stuff by now. But if I'm trying to get started and I'm not, maybe I haven't done much with surveys, I don't know much about data even, maybe. What kind of expertise or skill set do I need, if any, to get started with this?
Yeah, sure. Well, from our standpoint, we basically, there's two ways to do it. You can, if you don't have the expertise, you can hire the expertise. Okay. And you do that in the form of a consultant, typically, or something like that. What we say is we replace a lot of the knowledge with technology. So, a lot of your expertise comes in data validation, reporting, and all that. Creating there's a benchmarking study has 2 parts to it. One is the actual survey where you collect the data, and then the other is the actual is the reporting. Okay, so the survey part you can do pretty much on your own. It's validating the data and putting it in the meaningful format so that you can get it back to the members is where the hard part comes in. And you can either use us, we're technology, our product validates data in a lot of ways for you. You can set ranges and put guardrails in there to make sure that members are keying in proper data, or you can go hire it out. And so that's the way we look at it for most of the time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd add to that and say that Ray's maybe underselling the knowledge and capability of their team as well. We learned a lot in the establishment about even just what constitutes how to ask a proper question and how to generate something that's useful from something that we thought we wanted to know.
Good. Okay. Yeah. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and transition to our closing thoughts, and still feel free to add any questions that you have. But as we wrap things up here, just getting back to the first things, I just want to emphasize again that when we talk about member engagement, it's an exchange of value. It's easy to think about all the value that engaged members bring to the association in terms of revenue and data they provide and all that. But if you really want to build loyalty and build, sort of stickiness and clarify the value of that membership, there's really almost nothing I can think of that's better than something like this, which keeps them engaged but provides an exceptional member benefit. The data ecosystem is critical. We can talk all day at A2 about the ways that you can build out an exceptional data ecosystem for all the data that you keep on your members, and I would encourage you to reach out to us about that and to watch our other webinars on that topic. But today we're emphasizing that benchmarking studies can be a big part of that ecosystem. So, Ray, I think the next few are yours.
Yeah. So benchmarking, really, Casey hit on this. It helps the association stay relevant. Because the association is the place the trusted source for data for the members. And so consistently delivering on that keeps the association relevant to the members. And the other thing is don't always look at benchmarking as a cost, because there's certainly plenty of examples where it's a non-dues revenue source. Now, depending on the mix of charging for data and or getting sponsorship, that will determine how much really non-dues revenue it does generate, but it does have that potential. And then, the last thing I think, as Casey pointed on, is, don't wait until you need it to start collecting it, because it's if you've got it, their advocacy, I can promise you, is stronger than someone that goes and says, well, we want X amount of money for our membership, and we've been hurt really bad. Well, Casey walks in the door and says, this is the impact it's had on us, and this is what we would like. So.
No doubt. Anything to add to that, Casey?
No, I think Ray recapped it pretty well. I think it's important more than ever to stay relevant, and you have to see your members as tools to your success, and that you're benefiting them, and so they need to feel that same continuum. So it is very much a help us help you type of thing.
Good. Great. So we're just about at time here. Just want to wrap things up here. Thank you very much, to Ray and Casey. I mean, I actually learned a lot myself in today's webinar, and I'm sure that the audience did as well. So greatly appreciate your time for joining us. So next week, we're going to bring back Tamsin Haught. She's our in-house expert on data visualization and analysis. And actually, fun fact, the A2's longest tenured employee. She's going to be joined by Matt Braun from the Specialty Food Association. And basically, they're going to teach us how to do some really cool things with data visualization to help us with our data-informed decision-making. And of course, we'll be using Power BI for that. So promise that you'll leave with some inspiration and some tips on how to take your Viz game to the next level. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks on the 22nd at 3 p.m.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Take care.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.